Two big things. I'm Stephen Means, and that's Stefan Krajisnik. And Ohio State is on its second bye week of the season, and that's why we're here on a Tuesday. We're still talking with Brian Day today, so we still have things we're wondering about the team. It just we're not going to see the payoff for them until next weekend when they play Penn State in a blackout at daytime, because that makes all the sense in the world. Stefan, what do you want to learn from Ryan Day about the Buckeyes this week?
Yeah, I think when you looked at the schedule and you looked at this bye week, you figured it'd be 2 weeks of a lot of Penn State talk. And I'm here
Mm-hmm.
to bring up a point that has nothing to do with Penn State. I feel like the bye week's a good point to kind of reassess and ask Ryan Day about the game at the end of November, right? It's officially November in Ohio State sphere because this is they're done playing in October, right? Their next game is November 1st, and
Mm-hmm.
November is all about the game at the end of it, right? Beating Michigan and ending that losing streak that Ohio State has against Michigan. And I'm kind of just curious to see how Ryan Day has approached talking about that rivalry this year, because publicly it's been a lot less discussion about it publicly, because last year Ohio State won a national title despite beating Michigan, and it maybe changed the way we look at some things, right? I think that game is still massively important, but maybe the way we talk about it is different because of what Ohio State showed us last year. But throughout this offseason, Ryan Day hasn't talked a ton about Michigan, whereas last year we were told over and over and over again how the goals were beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win a national title. We haven't really heard all that as much this year. And, even at Big Ten Media Days in July, Ryan Day was asked about, what's it take to beat Michigan? And he just said, score more points than them, right? Like these are topics that felt like in the past were massive talking points, and it haven't been so much. And now that it's the bye week and we're kind of going into November, I'm curious, how Ryan Day has approached that this offseason and then this season, how often they talk about that game, how much they talk about that game, and kind of, is it something that they're going to deal with when it gets to Michigan week? Or has there been something that behind the scenes, and maybe he doesn't give us that answer, but is this something that behind the scenes they are still talking about as much as they have been in the past, right? Just because of the tone around that game. And it is interesting too, because like the way Ohio State's schedule is shaked out, we kind of thought that this Penn State game was going to be, maybe for a trip to Indianapolis on the line. And then we knew that, Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers were not going to be the toughest test, but then, Michigan was going to be at the end of it. And instead, it feels like Ohio State kind of has 4 games to ramp up, one more time down the stretch before the biggest game of the regular season for them. So I think right now, when you look at these teams, Ohio State is significantly better. I think if they were to meet on a neutral field, Ohio State would be, a decent favorite. Or if it was at Ohio Stadium, Ohio State would be a decent favorite. Maybe not as much as they were last year, but the game is still that game, right? And I think that's why right now, like if we were to do predictions for that game, everything in terms of X's and O's would tell you to pick Ohio State by a wide margin. And then everything else tells us not to do that, right? So it's this interesting discussion, because that game is just, the conversation about that game is so weird from so many different perspectives because of how much last year just changed a lot. And I'm curious how Ryan Day and the staff have approached that this offseason and this season, and now going into November, what that looks like.
He's going to be in a good mood on Tuesday, and then you're going to ruin it. I'm all for it though, because you're right. It's weird that we're living in a world where we're looking ahead of the Penn State game, but we're looking ahead of the Penn State game. And to be honest with you, even if Penn State was good, I don't think you or I would be picking Penn State to win that game. But it's just the premise of we've reached the point to where I don't even know if either of us are sure that Penn State's going to be able to do what they've done the last few years, where it's at least make Ohio State sweat a little bit. Now we'll see. We'll see what happens, right? That game's a week and a half from now, so we'll see what happens there. Ohio State, November is kind of where you want to solidify things in terms of personnel, right? And I think last year they weren't necessarily able to do that in some spots because of injuries, right? And even the year before that, Travion Henderson was in and out of the lineup. In 2022, Travion Henderson was in and out of the lineup. Mayan Williams was in and out of the lineup. You lost Jackson Smith and Jigba the first game of the season. Jordan Hancock was probably supposed to be a major piece for you in 2022. He has a hamstring injury in fall camp that sets him back. It's been a while since Ohio State's gotten to November where, knock on wood, there's no significant injuries in the way that where you're missing personnel pieces. There are guys who probably need to get healthy, like Edric Houston, right? Bo Jackson and his ankle situation, but there's nothing so significant that you're like, is this guy going to play or isn't he going to play? And so because of that, now you can focus on who are our best players. I feel like the first 7 games of the season were a 7 game long, who are our best players, what can they do, and what can we do with them? Whether it was the heavy tight end packages or they were spreading it out and going tempo as much as they did against Wisconsin, whether it's at running back where against Texas, the only running backs we saw are C.J. Donaldson and James Peoples. And now we're coming off a Wisconsin game where Isaiah West and Bo Jackson got the most carries, right? Josh Padilla wasn't necessarily on our radar to be the, hey, if there's a rotational guy on the offensive line, it would be him. We thought it would be, I mean, heck, we thought it would be Phillip Daniels and that Ethan Inyawa would be the starting left tackles. And we're so far away and so far removed from that. So at right guard, right, Josh Padilla started to work in. Do we see them maybe make a switch between that and Tegwa Shabola? So I don't, we can obviously go into detail about individual positions, right? The Jermaine Matthews at nickel situation or Lorenzo Styles and Devin, right? We can have all these different conversations about it. But the bigger picture conversation for me is for Ryan Day, have you reached the point now where this second bye week, you've achieved your mission, you're 7-0, you arguably got the best team in the country, you've learned a lot about your team. Do you know who your best players are? And do you feel like now you can start to put together a game plan going forth that this is whatever we see from November 1st on is what we expect to see for the rest of the season and the postseason, even if that means making some drastic changes? Is this the point in the year where if you're going to make dramatic switches in your personnel packages, this is where you do that? Because I feel like his answer to that question will tell me everything I need to know from a micro level how they handle each and every little decision.
Sorry, technical difficulties unmuting there. But yeah, no, I 100% agree. It is so fascinating because there are some things that just look, I don't want to say drastically different than we expected, but definitely different than we expected, right? We mentioned Padilla in the running back room. And yeah, this is an interesting spot because it does feel like Ohio State at multiple positions has guys who have shown, spurts of being pretty good this year and what they can be, right? But when it comes down to it, you need your best 11 on the field if it's a 2-minute drill against, a team in the college football playoff or against Indiana or Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. So yeah, it's an interesting stretch ahead because 5 games in 1 month is kind of a lot, right? Like they have 5 games in November. They have 5 games still left in this regular season coming off of this bye. And you had, what was it? It was 3 games before the first bye, 4 games before the second bye, and now you have a stretch of 5 games in 1 month. There's a lot that you can still figure out, but you're right. I'm curious where they are now and how much they figured out to this point and kind of what's left to figure out before you get to the postseason. I think it's kind of interesting in terms of personnel.
Yeah, 5 games left in the regular season, potentially up to 9 games left in the season. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. If Indiana and Ohio State are both undefeated, I don't think either of them drop so low that they don't get a bye week for the playoff.
It would be crazy to think that there's 10 games left, but it's possible.
Yeah, man. I don't want to think about that. 614-350-3315 is the 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Second off week of the season for Ohio State. They return to the field next weekend to play Penn State as they ramp up for a back-to-back championship run officially begins. These are the things we want to know. And I'm sure these are the things you also want to know because the other 4 games, while we're not going to overlook them, the carrot just got moved to November 29th instead of November 1st. And what does Ohio State do to get ready for that game up in Ann Arbor over the next month? He's Stefan. I'm Steven. Talk to you guys later.